Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to today's workshop about how to find a summer REU. Just as a last reminder, if you could go ahead and use that barcode to sign in if you haven't already. My name is Ishan, and this is Varan. We're CURBS ambassadors. And with that, we'll get this started. So the first question about an REU is how to find one. And the main way that we find REUs is using the NSF REU database. And I'll just pull up the site right here. When you go to the NSF site, you will be taken to this screen. And what you want to click on is for students, and then search for an REU site. And once you do that, you'll find a list of disciplines that offer REUs. And if perchance you don't find the discipline that you want, you can always type it in here, search for it, and the respective REU will pop up. Now, just as an example, I'll select chemistry, and that'll show you all of the different REUs that are available and that you can apply for. And you can just browse those to find which ones interest you and have a short list. And then from there, you can start your applications. So today we do have a panel of two speakers who have conducted REUs in the past. We have Abdallah, who had an REU in immunology at Texas A&M Medical Research Center, and also Iris, who has done two REUs, one in sociology, one in astrobiology at Johns Hopkins and at NASA, respectively. And I'll let the panel speak about their experiences now.
So we're just going to talk a little bit about our REU. So REU stands for Research Experience for Undergraduates. The NSF, they sponsor a ton of them. So that's why sometimes you might hear called NSF REU. But we just use it to refer to any summer research experience. Typically it's paid and stuff like that. And they take you somewhere, or it could be remote, but either option works. And yeah, the summer research essentially when what it boils down to. So I did mine in immunology. I went to Texas for the summer of 2019. And I did research on tuberculosis and its different mechanisms of action. So I got paid to get stipend. I got a lot of money to just kind of go to Texas, and also got housing and food stuff paid for, and was essentially a graduate student. So I was doing 40 hours a week of research in my lab, participating fully as a lab member. So journal clubs, lab socials, work, I was being mentored by a graduate student. And at the end, I presented a poster and a talk. So that was my summary.
So my first one was at Johns Hopkins. That was in person, and that was after my first freshman year, so my sophomore summer. And in this experience, I basically looked at letters of recommendation for people trying to match into pediatric surgery residencies and determine how race and gender influence their ability to match based on the language written in the letters of recommendation, which was really, really cool. I'm a microbiology major, so this was kind of something out of my comfort zone, which was really cool, but I think I learned a lot about interdisciplinary research. Also realized I definitely didn't want to go into the medical field, which is also really important too. And then I interned at UF after that, which I can talk about as well if any of you are curious about internal internships. And then this past summer I interned at NASA, which is a little different from Adula because this was through a different program called the Space Life Sciences Training Program. So I didn't necessarily work with a grad student, but I got my own independent project with a mentor. Some people were part of larger labs as well. And it was a group of 10 people, and we had midterms and finals and presentations, and we had to write a paper for our final project. And in this internship, I looked at the microbiome of the International Space Station and compared isolates from the ISS to terrestrial isolates to see what's similar and different between the two. And both were paid, and one was remote.
Yeah, so now let's open the floor to questions from you guys about any part of the process, from applying to what you do after and in between. So go ahead. Or I think this actually.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, so for me, I did not have to interview. So I applied to a few my freshman year, and all the ones that I applied for, I did not need to interview. So I just submitted my application through their website, and they had a pretty lengthy application. So updated with questions, not only a general one that's oh, why do you like science, or what's your goal, but also talk about a time when you face a challenge, or talk about a time when you had to work as a team, stuff like that. So the applications I think are kind of lengthy, and it's hard because you also need to get recommendation letters for them. So that was the whole process of applying for me. Otherwise, yeah, nothing. What about you?
Yeah, I had interviews for both of my, the first one was just a phone interview with the PI, the person in charge, and then I had an in-person interview after that, and she just basically asked the questions about my application. She also had some specific questions on things I did from like my resume and from my app, which was kind of interesting, so I wasn't expecting that going into it. And for NASA, it was pretty crazy. Like I will admit, there was 3 rounds of interviews. The first was with kind of the HR person just to see like what was up, you know, and then the second was with an actual like who would become my mentor. Some people had more than me as well. If the people reach out to you, and then the third one was kind of what you said, like a group where it was just me, but it was a couple other people. And that was just kind of a background check, and then like they offered it after that. And the app was very long. I think there were like 6 essay questions and then 3 letters of rep, and then just like general what you've done in the past. So, yeah. And don't be scared for interviews. They weren't that bad, honestly. It was just more to see like what I was doing and, you know, if I'd be a good fit.
Yeah, so do the applications, do they all open at the same time, or does each file have their own deadline?
There are some really common dates for deadlines. So like January 31st, like around that timeline was a big closing date. Also, like there's some that are later, so like maybe like March 1st. That region is like when you should try to have everything figured out by. So I think a good timeline to like think about what REUs you want to apply to would be like winter break at the latest, probably, to like have like a month to get them together.
Yeah, and I don't want to scare you, but my app for some programs like mine was due in December. So I would say like as early as you kind of want to look into it and just get the idea of those dates is really important. Because I was accepted by January, so I didn't even finish the rest of my apps, which is honestly kind of nice. So maybe look for those that have like those earlier deadlines if you really want them, like focus your energy onto that.
You need to get different letters of recommendation for each application, and if you apply using a letter of recommendation, you don't get it. You apply you use that same letter of recommendation.
For your first question, you don't have to use different letters of recommendation. So I use the same for every REU that I applied to. I use the same letters of recommendation. So I have like a research mentor, and I also had like someone supervise like a summer program I did here, and then I think a teacher is also potentially a good option if you've like done one class and stuff like that. And yeah, if you reapply, you can reuse letters. Hopefully, you would update the letters to like reflect what you've done in the past year, as opposed to just from the first year.
Yeah, I would say it's something also important, like 2 things. I really like the comment on the teacher one. I think that's honestly like a really underutilized resource because like I was applying for a fellowship, which was slightly different than like an REU, but like the person was like, oh, the letter from your teacher was the best one because like we saw this about you, which we wouldn't see in the research setting. So getting a good connection with your teachers is super great. And I'd also say if the app does specify certain things that they want to see, you might want to reach out to your letter writers and say, hey, could you please include this? They asked for this, because that does happen sometimes. Like maybe they want to see specific things about your research, or maybe they want to see like, do you have like good volunteering skills? Like it can be stuff that you don't even expect to see on an app. So I would say like double check, but for the most part, you can use the same one.
Can you guys repeat the questions for the recording?
Oh yeah.
So there are like a lot of opportunities for REUs. So I was wondering like what you look for when you're choosing one, like, specifically, like, does it depend on like the college or like just like
So I think the question was, how do you kind of choose which REUs you want to apply to? And for me, I think the first time I applied, I was like, I just really want experience. You know, I just want to see if I like this or not, see if this is kind of a field I want to go into. And then I kind of went for there. The second time with UF is because of COVID, so not much choice. The third time was when I really had to narrow down. And I think by that point, I kind of used my past experiences to say like, okay, what field am I pretty sure about? And by like my junior year, I'm pretty set on microbiology at that point. So I kind of specified like, okay, only microbiology REUs. And then most things were remote, which I honestly preferred at the time. So I was also looking for remote opportunities so they wouldn't get canceled. I think if that wasn't the case, I would definitely consider location, cost of living, although they do give you a stipend and often a place to live. Like food can be expensive and stuff like that. Because my internship would have been in California in like the most pricey area of town. And the amount of money they would have given us like probably wouldn't have covered it. So that's something to definitely consider.
Yeah, nothing more really than Iris said. I would say I primarily searched based on topic. So like I was really interested in immunology. So that's why I searched up for like immunology. All the ones that I applied to were kind of related to that field, either like neuro or immunology. And also because I think the reason why I got accepted too is because like the things that I applied to were things that I had like experience in. Not saying that you have to have experience because you don't. But it's good if you have experience in the past. So I was like, oh, I would take in a like vaccine design seminar. So therefore like, I'd be a good candidate for like working in immunology. So that's why I think it's pretty good to like narrow down specifically on what you've done in the past and reflect on that and then choose things to apply to. Of course, it's going to be harder to get an REU in something that you don't have as much experience in, but it is still possible.
How long do these programs last?
So the question is how long do the programs last? And mine was, it's usually 8 to 10 weeks. Mine was, or 8 to 12, mine was 10 weeks. So
Mine was also 10 weeks.
next question.
When you applied to the REUs in universities, did you have an idea beforehand of which faculty members you wanted to work with?
It depends on the REU. Some of them, they tell you to indicate your preference for faculty members. So you'll list like the top 3. Some of them tell you not to reach out to faculty members and not to even like talk to them beforehand because they will assign you based on like your strengths and what they think your strengths are. So it just depends on the program, but they'll let you know in the application.
Yeah, so how many letters of recommendation? I'd say 3 is a like gold standard, honestly. Sometimes the apps will indicate like, oh, we take 2, but if you have less than 2, we won't accept you. And honestly, as someone who like feels like a letter of recommendation expert after having read like literally 1,000, like just know that these people have to read a lot, and having read 4 is like a little much. So anything over that, like they will just kind of get a little bit bored, honestly. So 3 is usually like the sweet spot.
I use 2 for most of mine. It depends on the field.
Are like the missions for REUs rolling, or do they like accept everyone? Like, do they like look at them?
So the question was, are deadlines for REU rolling? And like one day they look at people. I think that sometimes it is rolling. So like if you just apply really early, then they might accept you really early. But most of mine all have a formal deadline, and only after that they'll look at the applications. That's what I understand.
Mine was, it was a weird one, and that's the one was weird. Basically, like I applied, but then they accepted us on like a different basis, if that makes sense. Like some of us got accepted in January, but some people didn't get accepted until February, March. So I don't know if that's rolling per se, but I think we didn't all get the notice at the same time. Definitely not. But for the other ones, it was like this is the due date. This is when you're accepted by, stuff like that. So if you didn't get it or not. Yeah.
A good fallback application.
A good fallback plan. That's such a good question.
So
Yeah,
I would
go
say
for
you
it.
should apply to like a range of REU. So like some of them are going to be a lot more competitive. So let's say like an REU at some place like at the top of its field. Like if you go to like Stanford and you want to do biomaterials, this is something that I wanted to do in the past. I didn't get it in Stanford biomaterials because it's like a really competitive like area and like school and like culture. It's like it's amazing, and that's why it's really hard to get in. But if you also apply to places that like have that match your research interest but might not be like as well known or something, then that's an option too. So like if you apply to UF, you probably might be more likely to get into like a UF program. And UF does have some programs too. More bio, I know about the bio-related ones, but we have a few different programs. So if you look at like local in Florida ones, some people prefer to take people from Florida. I went to one in Texas, and there were like a sizable amount of people that they picked from Texas. So they did have kind of a little bit of a bias for in-state applicants. It's probably very different among all REUs. I'm not gonna pretend that I know like the ins and outs of the admissions processes. But I think that if you apply to like 5 to 10 is probably a good range. And if not, you can always just do research at your home institution for the summer too.
I'd say like if you have a good connection with your mentor, because like this is what happened during COVID summer for me. It was like I was applying and then all of a sudden like they're all like, oh, we're not having that anymore. So I had to reach out to my mentor and I was like, hey, like, would you be willing if I just stayed here for the summer and like work 40 hours a week? And he was like, sure. And honestly, like, helped me build so many skills. So it's not even like a fallback at that point. I think it was honestly a really good decision. So always having that in your mind, I think is, yeah, really important.
Yeah, also another benefit to staying at home, if you are like staying at your home institution, if you don't get to an REU, is that like, let's say you spend 40 hours a week in your home lab this summer, then for the rest of your career at UF, you'll kind of have like maybe the seniority and authority kind of a graduate student because you've been doing so much work. So those are the benefits.
Yeah, how much prior research experience did you have before you?
Which prior research experience did you have before you applied to REUs? First.
Yeah, so the one I did my sophomore summer, I had already had 1 semester of research in a somewhat related field, but not entirely the same. So I did agricultural education, which ended up helping me in the process a little bit. And then, so then I had that internship under my belt a little bit, and then I got into my next lab during my sophomore fall. So by the time I applied to NASA, that was like 2.5 years of experience. Yeah.
So for my REU, which was after my freshman summer, I had been doing research at UF for like basically like a year. Like I started in fall as soon as I got to UF and was continuing to spring. And I also had like science fair and high school experience that I think typically you probably shouldn't talk about like your high school experience in your REU apps, but I was a freshman and I was applying in the fall, or like I was getting application ready in the fall of my freshman year. So I had only been in college for less than a semester at that point. So if that's your situation, I don't think it's bad to use maybe high school stuff. And I was like fortunate to have research experience in high school, so I used that.
I would also say, like, I know this is research experience, but don't undercount like stuff that you kind of think is random. So I put some stuff in my app where I'm like, I don't think this even looks that good, but it was like the thing that she kind of appreciated the most about my application. So even if it's not research, like if you have leadership experience in the club, like that's huge. You know, if you're part of organizations that do really cool things, that can still work in your favor. So they definitely don't only look at research if you don't have much experience, but I think it is a factor. Kind of like what we said with like those higher institutions, that is probably one of the bigger factors. Is kind of having that under your belt.
Oh, this reminds me, there are actually some programs that are like designed only for people who don't have research experience in the past, or like I think like Gators is maybe something like that. Like at Cornell, a lot of like these institutions have programs that are built for designed for people to get them interested and invested in research with little background. So there's also good options. So the question was in terms of funding and scholarships, how do you want to obtain that? For me, it was automatically with the program, like getting accepted into the program meant that you would also get a stipend. But I know that UF does actually offer like, I think for like international research, there's like some scholarships you can get that UF will fund you to do it.
There's travel awards as well. For me, the first one was actually hourly. So my wage was kind of set after I was accepted. And then I did get a stipend from my NASA. So on the UF was also paid hourly. But yeah, it's kind of confusing because sometimes they won't tell you until later as well. So you kind of have to like wait it out a little bit, and then they'll be like, here's the money. Yay. So that's kind of what happened to me. So
yeah, for me, it was around like, I think like 5,000 for the whole summer. So I don't think it worked out to like an amazing hourly wage, but it's like something to like make it not like cost prohibitive. So actually.
I know some of the programs I've been looking at ask you to submit a proposal of the project you would want to work on. If not, the project that the lab is doing with their own proposal. Either you have experience with that or any advice?
oh boy.
Yeah.
So the question was, if the application requires you to write a research proposal, any advice? How would you go about that? So I'm actually applying for a fellowship with NSF right now, and that's exactly what they're asking me to do. And that's been like the last 3 months of my life. So I feel like I can talk about it a little bit. I would say my best advice is if you can find an expert in the field you're going into, like that the REU wants you to go into, either one, honestly. Go to them and say like, hey, my name is this, like I'm trying to apply this program, like can we meet? And honestly meet with them and just like ask them point blank, like what do you think is really novel in this field right now? and they will kind of give you a couple ideas to what they think a good proposal would look like. And then you can either contact your own research mentor or that person again and kind of have them guide you sort of in the process, because especially if you haven't written a proposal before, it's super daunting. Like, how do you start? How do you even write the methods part? You know, so I would say find someone who's done it, honestly, and just ask them about it, because it is so tricky. I had to write a couple of those, and yeah, especially if it's a field you're not familiar with, it is super hard to figure it out. So find something you kind of know a little bit about. Yeah, people call them. Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much. So if that field that the proposal would be in is different than a mentor here at this institution, do you just recommend getting in contact with the professor at that program, or would
I would
somebody
say-
who's unaffiliated?
I would say at UF, like, let's just say I'm in microbiome right now, but in my app, I wanted to do something a little bit different than what I was doing research in. So I went on the microbiology faculty page and like found the people who were doing the stuff that I wanted to do and emailed them. I was like, hey, can you help me with this? And yeah, everyone answered, was like, they're always very happy to. You can try the institution you're applying for the REU, but like that might be a little tricky because sometimes they don't want you to put like the preference for the people you're applying to. So I'd say finding someone at UF is a really safe bet, and most of the time they're really happy to help. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good questions. Did you already set up like other educational opportunities while you're there outside of the lab, or what's what are you doing that time that you're not working?
So I have, so the question was, what do you do outside of your lab time, specifically regarding like, education opportunities? So at my REU, we would have a lecture seminar kind of series thing. So like every week we'd have like 2 to 3 lectures in the morning before we went to lab. The lectures would be like either like science themed, or sometimes it'd be about like medicine. Since in my REU, a lot of people were pretty health oriented, so they asked us what we wanted to see, and a lot of people were interested in like medical topics, so we did that. I remember a really cool one that I saw was like this MD PhD guy who was talking to us about like using CRISPR to like to do like gene editing and stuff, and it was amazing. And they also gave us a free lunch too, like also for my lab, I would go places and like they give us so some companies try to like do sales pitches to my lab to like make them buy like their assays and stuff, so then they would give us free lunch. So a lot of free lunch, a lot of learning. Yeah.
Mine, I think mine is very similar. I think we also had an element of professional development, which I thought was really cool. So we kind of have lectures on actually proposal writing and grant writing and stuff like that, which helped a lot, as well as elevator pitches and public speaking workshops was a big part of it. And then we also had seminars almost every day. So that was like people kind of speak to us. And the coolest one is I got to talk to the guy who like found the Big Bang Theory, like the scientific thing, not the show. I was confused. But that was just like super cool. So stuff like that is just super awesome, interesting. And then we also had like, because it was virtual, they really wanted us to still like have like that relationship and really tight connection. So we'd also have Monday Night Live, which was like Saturday Night Live, but not. So we'd actually all like come together over Zoom and like hang out and do like a happy hour sort of thing. But it's honestly really cute and fun. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for my lab we also did like social stuff. So not only did I get to participate in my lab socials, so they would like go to bars and stuff. I mean, like I couldn't really like participate fully because like sometimes we go places that were like only 21 up, but like I couldn't go. Whatever. Anyway, so but there were other like lab socials, and there were like social sponsored by the programs. They would like buy us all pizza or like take us to go like ice skating, and like they would do some events.
Oh, we also had we did like field trips. They were virtual, but usually they're in person. So we got to see different like NASA laboratories, like the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and stuff like that. This giant centrifuge, which is super cool. And like got a tour of like the ISS and stuff like that. So yeah, like more field trips, which is really cool. So the question was, what did we wish before we applied, and what did we wish before we were actually doing it? I think before I applied, this is actually something I found out recently, and looking back, I really wish I used this resource. So at UF, there's something called the University Writing Studio. I don't know if you guys have been there or heard of it, but these people are like magicians, no joke. Like they will read over your statements, anything you want them to read, and they will just fix it so it sounds a million times better. And I've been using it. I've done like twice a week the past few weeks. And I look at my writing from like when I applied, and I was like, how did I even get this? Like they've improved it so much. So I think that to me is like an underutilized resource that is so helpful for apps. Yeah.
For the writing studio, do you have to schedule an appointment?
Yeah, so it's online. It's pretty easy. So you just look up the University Writing Studio and then it gives you to like this giant like spreadsheet, and there's a bunch of times. It only takes half an hour, and it's all over Zoom right now. So you just register and then you just show up, and they're super, super nice and helpful. And I think before going, I would say that I didn't, even though it's full time, I think I wasn't expecting it to have the time commitment that it did. And a lot of days, a lot of weeks, I've probably worked close to 60 or 80 hours, which is more than I was expecting. But they tried to tell us that, and I was like, no, it won't be that bad. It's definitely like structuring your time well, and like honestly giving yourself breaks and like not only focusing on it, which was something I didn't fully expect going into it. Yeah.
So for me, for beforehand, I guess I wish I like kind of planned everything out better, because there were some programs that I missed the deadlines for, because like let's say they were like January 15th, so I was only getting my like asking for rec letters like first week of January, so it was kind of like pushing it. So I only applied to ones that had like later deadlines, but there were really cool programs that I thought I might have been able to get into if I just like gotten everything arranged earlier. So I guess just like timing. And then for while I was there, I think I would maybe like try to be really diligent with like my lab notebook and like protocol and stuff. Because a lot of times,
yeah.
a lot of times I would have to like ask, or I would shadow a protocol, and then I would have, and then I'd be expected to do it on my own. But just seeing it one time was not enough. So like, and I was kind of writing stuff down, but I wasn't being like that meticulous as I could have been. So it was like, you know, being diligent, basic stuff. Can you speak up?
I think that's what's a lot of it, exactly. So honestly, it depends on your field. I can say because most of my work now is computational, because I honestly just liked it more than in-person lab work. So for me, an in-person lab notebook is like a physical notebook that they give you, and pretty much like what you just said, like you need to write down like every single step they do, and like make sure you look at how much the measurement is, how long it's in there for, and you write down pretty much every single thing, every single step. And then I usually also use it to document my results. And I'd say for my computational lab notebook, like that's the most important thing. I'll remember how I did this, or I'll remember how I wrote this code. I will not remember. So I kind of use it to like say, like, you looked this up and use this package to do this. And then like look back and be like, that is what I did. So that's such a great point, because this summer I was scrambling by the end because I had no idea how I did anything.
And I had an in-person lab notebook, so it was like they gave it to me and told me like write everything down.
Everything.
Do most REUs like require you to like, present at the end or do something like that?
Yeah, most. So the question was, do most REUs require you to present at the end? And I hope the answer would be yes, because I think that it's a really valuable part of the REU is honing and like working on your presentation skills and your scientific communication. So ideally, yes. I think it'd be weird if there was an REU that just kind of like let you do like 10 weeks of research and then didn't have a symposium or presentation or anything to like kind of synthesize all of your work at the end.
I would say for me, my first one actually didn't, but I did have to write a paper.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different because the lab was like fairly small, and I can kind of talk about like working. You said a lot of you guys were pre-med. So I actually did work with someone who only had their MD. So their schedule was crazy. So, like there was no like, there actually wasn't much like one-on-one work, and then like it wasn't a symposium because it wasn't like a research conference. It's a hospital. And so they had me write like a paper instead, which was really valuable. But then I think sometimes you do symposia, and then sometimes you also just do like verbal presentations as well.
It varies. So in California, they actually release schools a lot later, like universities later. So like for my program in Texas that I like did, they said that there were some California applicants who like asked if they could come like a week late or something, and then they were like no. So then yeah. So my point is, be careful about like school dates and REU dates. Yes. But for most of the U.S., I'm pretty sure school dates end like well before. So mine was I think like May, like mid to late May is when it started. And it ended like early August.
Yeah, so mine was in California. So actually mine started in like June, like middle of June, which was nice because I got a full month off of school. But it's ended the day before school started. So yes, do be mindful because that was a tricky time. But yeah, we had someone from UCLA in our lab. She was like, I just can't start until June 15th. So that's when we ended up starting. Yeah.
So do, what's the case for like the same expectations of like players?
Yeah. So the question was like, do REUs kind of have the same expectation? And I think it probably depends on the institution you're working for the most. I do think they try to keep it consistent within the institution from what I can see. Like obviously I work for like a pretty big one and they did try to keep most of the internships like pretty similar, honestly, with like the expectations and stuff that they needed you to do. But yeah, I'd say that's the main factor. Yeah, so for example, I think the big, oh, I'm so sorry. The question is like, can I get some examples of what I had to do? And yeah, so the main thing was hours was a really big thing that was really highly regimented. That wasn't in my other REUs, like kind of like clock in, clock out, you know. But with this one, they were like, no, we like write down your schedule, like block out when you're expected to work. And that was a big thing. And then they also like the presentations are a big one. They expect you to present. Another really big thing is that you can't talk about what you do, which was very interesting. I hadn't really experienced that before. So I'd say that one was a huge difference because it's all confidential. I guess it's more working for the government than anything else, but that was a big thing. So it's honestly not like, oh, can I go present to this conference? The answer is no. So they do have more internal events. And for the other ones, I think a big thing is like having lab meetings, stuff like that. Journal club, which I think you mentioned. So those are kind of expectations that they had that I wasn't that familiar with before I like entered in.
Mine like, schedule, which is like go to lab and like do essays most of the time. So after like lectures and seminars in the morning, I just go to lab and like for the first 2 weeks, I like shadowed my graduate student mentor very tightly and just followed everything she did. And then afterwards, I was like let on my own to do my experiments. Like specifically, if you want the details, I was like doing like tissue culture stuff. So I was working with tissue culture and then kind of subjecting cells to different substances and like small molecules to evaluate the responses to them. So yeah, I had a lot of like physical like lab work to do. And because of that, there were nights that I had to like stay in the lab till like 11 p.m. because like I did the experiment wrong the first time. So I had to like redo it. And then like it takes like 8 hours or something total. So you have to like, so there's a lot of a big learning curve to it. And you're gonna be flexible. But the good thing is like you're only doing one thing that summer, and it's gonna be like your REU. Well, I also did a class along with it. I took I did they like technically I think you're not supposed to, but I just didn't tell anyone. So I did like microbiome. Also, I justified it because I was like, well, I'm taking a microbiome class and I'm also working with microbiome. So I think it's like fair.
The cool thing is though, it's like not, this is a tangent, complete tangent, but I was actually able to like waive my summer requirements because I didn't REU, which is also another factor. So I've taken 1 3-credit class, but NASA was like, you cannot be affiliated with your university at all during the time of the internship. So I literally could not take any other classes. And so I was able to like get the requirement. So that's something to think about. Yeah.
Otherwise, for schedule, a lot of like, there were also a lot of breaks in between too. Like I don't know if you're to do like wet lab research, but a lot of it is waiting too. So like I just walk around and go around my friends in the other labs. So they be like right next to me. So there's a lot of fun stuff too along with the 11 p.m.
It's fun. Yeah, it's honestly fun. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah. So other than the NSF website, what other sources do you recommend looking at for
The question was like, what are some other resources? I'm so sorry, I do not remember what this is called, but there's this one website, and honestly, if you look up like whatever your field is, and then like research for summer research internship, like this site will pop up, and do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. It basically is like a database that is continuously updated with like every single resource, every single pretty much like summer undergraduate experience, and that's where I kind of found everything I was applying to. And they have it characterized by like when's the due date, what field it's in, is it paid, is it remote, and you can like sort it that way. And yeah, I found that to be like insanely helpful.
What I did to find things that were like outside the NSF REU database, I just looked up like blank summer research
Yeah.
experience. So I like For example, I looked up like biomaterials summer research, and then I learned that like UCSF has like a whole institute dedicated just to biomaterials, and then like everyone there is focusing on that. So that's a really good way if you like narrow your search to find places that are like really tailored for what you want to do, and it's super cool. It's the more you know about what you kind of want to do, the easier it'll be. There's a lot of programs on like neuro and like molecular research stuff like that. So that's what I know. I think there's a lot of like physics and math REUs. That's on the database. But yeah, there are a ton of experiences that just aren't on the Undergraduate REU database. Just because they're not funded by the NSF, but they're still funded by someone. So like the NIH has really cool stuff. NIST, if you're like physical sciences, there's a ton of cool places.
Oh, also, UF also has actually a pretty good set of links as well, which I found like just randomly, honestly. I think it honestly might be in the CURBS website. It actually has links to external experiences, which is kind of like the starting point. But I'd also say like, yeah, if you know what you want to do, like this is kind of something I always knew I wanted to do. So I think I kind of head to that website because I knew like, okay, this is what I want to do. How am I going to do it? Pretty much, yeah.
Another thing I did was I looked up cool places, and I was like, oh shoot, like Caltech has like its own like, I don't know, like particle accelerator. Sure, I'll go there. Whatever. Or like the Pasteur Institute. That's like a really cool place in France that does like really cool microbiome stuff. And I was like, oh, I want to go to France. Like, that'd be so cool. Yeah. So those are like examples of how you can find places.
Is working in the lab more of a collaborative effort, or is most of the responsibility?
So the question is working in the lab more collaborative or individual, and like where the responsibilities come into play. So, well, first, let me just preface this with, at the end of the day, you were an undergraduate, so they kind of expect you to know nothing. And so like, if you do something wrong, then like maybe your graduate student mentor will like kind of get mad at you, but your PI won't get mad at you. They get mad at the grad student because they're supposed to teach you, you're like the mentor. So at the end of the day, like responsibility is kind of shared between you and the graduate student because you're part of a team. Like they're not going to leave you completely on your own because like you just joined the lab, you're only going to be there for like 3 months. Like that's not like enough time to like, it's enough time to like get proficient in a lot of classes, but it's not enough time to like not make mistakes, you know? So they'll be very tolerant with you. Hopefully, it also depends on a lot of culture
Yeah,
too.
I was about to say that's 100% true. I completely agree with that for my first two. For the third one, like that was definitely not the case. Like if I messed up, it was totally on me. You know, it was like I had to run the whole project myself, honestly. So that was a case where it was individual, but we also had a group project component. That's kind of how they worked that into the experience. So we had a completely separate project that we had to come up with by ourselves as well. So everything was pretty much on us, which is a little bit scary. But again, I am a computational biologist for the most part, so that might just be me being on my computer by myself. You know, it's hard to do that with a group of people, honestly. I tried. You just have to share code back and forth. In the lab for sure, like if you're gonna mess up, like as you said, like if I do like my PCR and it doesn't work, I'm not gonna be like, oh, you suck at this, you know, fired. You know, it's like, yeah, it's definitely shared.
Yeah, also really trying to troubleshoot stuff, but there is a component that is there's a lot of individual responsibility. So like making your poster, they'll help you with stuff, but you have to like do data analysis yourself. Again, everything they'll teach you, but there is a pretty big responsibility. If you're going to be there 40 hours a week, they want you to have something when you kind of exit.
Yeah, I'd say starting for sure they'll teach you, but like again, like my third one, like I think it depends on who you apply for because they expected us to know like certain things, and if you didn't know that, like you kind of had to find that out on your own. Yeah.
This is kind of a tangent to that. This is a good way to find out if you like science and do the scientific process, or
Yeah.
maybe you really analyze data, or maybe you hate being in the lab and being a tech slave.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's what I realized. Honestly, I was like working, I was just like, this is not for me. Which is a really equally valuable experience to know that you don't want to do something then if you want to do it.
Besides that, is there anything like something really
Yeah, so the question was, what else do they pretty much look for? What is the recommendation are pretty big. And I don't know if you agree with this, but honestly, I think the thing that has gotten me most of my experiences has been I'm passionate about it. So if you can display that you are really passionate about a subject, even if you know like nothing about it. If that can read through your writing, especially the essay part, like that is a huge factor. And I would say doing research into what you're applying. If you go the extra mile and look up the institution, look up what they do there, look up why they do it. If you look up all of that information and include that in your essays, that'll show that you are like one, a good student, you'd be a great person to have in the lab, and you took that extra time out of your day to go and do that, and that goes a really long way. And then I would say just like, I kind of mentioned this earlier, like even if you think an experience is silly, like, don't hesitate to include it. I think doing anything external looks great because they don't just want you to only like do school all the time. Like that's just not what they expect, you know. So again, if you have that volunteering, if you have those other experiences, that's also something they want to see if you're like a well-rounded individual as well. Yeah.
So I think that thing that's worked for me is like I kind of mentioned it earlier, but like tailoring, like the programs that I applied to, I had relevant experience. Like I was in a neuro lab, like I applied to like in the program, I got into a guy. I also talked about my career goals and how I was like, oh well, I'm wanting to do like I want to get a position, but I also want to do medical research. So I think that like this would like really help me with career development. That's something I talked about. I also talked about like what Iris said is like I did research into the schools in the lab. So I said like and the programs. I said like doing this program would be good for me, and I would like it because not only do I get to do really high caliber and valuable science, but also because like I joined a community of scholars because I get a lecture seminar on like up to date modern advancements in science. I get like this whole community aspect too. So like I talked about the software aspect of the REU as opposed to just the science. Just yeah.
Also, yeah. I think that's just a really good point, tailoring and stuff like that. And I think the other thing is like your career definitely like accounts for that. I do think a large reason I got a lot of them was because I am applying for my PhD. And not to say that if you're applying for your MD, that's not going to affect it. I'm saying if it is an organization that usually doesn't take medical students, like NASA, for example, like that might not be as much of a selling point. So maybe sort of downplaying and upplaying certain aspects of your career goals is a big part of it. Because I had a friend who did the program with me, but he said he wanted to be an MD PhD, which honestly wasn't true. He like just wanted to get MD, but one of the reasons why he got it is because they like expect you to fully go into research. So if you're even considering it, like that's not something to shy away from for sure.
Yeah, one of the programs that I was applying to said like don't apply if you're an MD only student. Like if you're going to preferentially take PhDs. This is at Stanford, by the way. So like they said they're preferentially going to take PhDs, and like in some cases they'll take MD PhD aspiring students. But yeah, a lot of them prefer PhDs. It's like they're building the future foundation of scientists.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They want to help you, I guess, is like the main point. So if you kind of show that like this is why I can help you, that's a really big thing. So if you are considering like pretty much if you're planning on doing research in the future at all, kind of definitely saying that. And if you are considering MD PhD, which is honestly a really smart decision, like money wise, it's really cool. I looked into it. Definitely right about that. Why research is going to be a big part of your future.
So we're all going to apply to some fun REU this summer. I'm excited. You guys all go really fun places and get paid a lot of money and make a lot of friends. Oh, I wanted to say too, I made really great friends on my REU. So like because we live together and stuff like that, we're all like each other every day. It was a really immersive environment. We all struggled together, you know. I was in lab late at night, they were in lab late at night, people go home together. It was like trauma bonding kind of, but like
I met some of my best friends for sure. Like they are like just the most awesome people. Just like honestly, some of the smartest people I've ever met, which is like so daunting and scary. But you get to meet them and talk to them, and you spend so much time with these people that like it's hard not to be friends with them at a certain point. It was great.
Yeah, I'm an REU. It was like I was a freshman and my two like besties were like sophomores, and now one's like in medical school and one's at the NIH and stuff. And so
one of the closest friends was going to MIT for a PhD, and that was crazy. Oh, that's kind of a good point to bring up. Like once you're in the REU, I should have answered this earlier. I wasn't expecting networking to be so important. I don't know if you've like also had that experience, but like once you're in that organization, take the time out of your day to like contact anyone that you think can help you in the future, honestly. Because like they will have those connections that you won't get at UF, which is like the main point. So just reaching out to them, just really going to the director and being like, okay, this person does what I want to do, and like reaching out to them. Because that's something I wasn't expecting to have to do going into it, but that is something that helped me so much because I've been able to reach back to them now and be like, hey, would you mind reading over this app? And they're like, yeah. Or like, hey, I heard about this research opportunity. Like, can I get in on that? And they're like, sure, like I can try. So yeah, I would say like making friends with the people there, but also making friends with like anyone higher up is not a bad idea at all. Yeah.
So I know you guys might have more questions, but we also have like a pro tips kind of slide or let's say one.
All right, so hopefully Abdullah and Aris's panel answered like most of your questions, but like regarding like the application process and stuff like that, here's some like tips that you should consider when you're applying. So the biggest one is your recommendation letter is time sensitive, and you want to meet with your advisor or whoever's like writing your letter, and you want to like, you know, tell them like these are your goals, this is what you want to do. And when you're asking them to write the letter, like make sure that you tell them like the deadlines when you're applying. And it's like really important, like they're doing this for you. So make sure to like thank them and like update them on like, did you get into the program and like where you are. And one of the biggest things like really is just like the deadlines are important and you don't want to have to miss a program just because you don't have your recommendation letter in on time. So when you're like reaching out to your letter writers, like make sure you format it in a way that they know like, okay, this is the deadline that they need to get it in by because they're busy people, you're a busy person. Like just make sure that they know, you know, when you need to have it by. And also another important thing is to like, it's good to talk about your qualifications, but uniquely like why you're qualified for this specific program, not just like why you're qualified in general. And you want to like find specific aspects of the program that are like tailored to you and like what you want to do in the future. And also like finding a mentor and like talking to them about like how what you've done in the past is similar and why it makes you a good candidate. And like don't let experience be like one of the hindrances to like applying to something. It's always nice to try something new. So don't let like you not having prior experience in a field like steer you away from a research opportunity. And another important thing is like networking skills, reaching out to professors like before applying. Like some of these REUs, like they say specifically not to, but in the cases where it is possible, like go ahead and reach out to like the PI that you are interested in working under, like, you know, talk to them, find out like what it is that they do in their lab and like specifically like how would you help them and how would they help you. And like, yeah, reaching out to the program directors can make you like really understand like what Abdul is talking about, like the softer aspects of the program, not just like the science aspect. Like if there are seminars, if there's like other like learning opportunities given by the program, it's important to find those things out to see like what it is that like you want to do specifically. And then also like REUs are competitive, so it's important to have like a wide range that you're applying to. And if you're applying to like the top 20 schools, like those will be hard and like competitive. So it's good to like keep like a nice big list of the REUs that you're interested in, like the fields. And also if you're like a underrepresented minority, it's important to look into programs that are specifically designed for minorities. And I don't know if you can find them on the NSF website, but you can definitely find programs that are catered towards minority groups.
I want to add something to this for applying to like talking to the program director. So some programs have like the program director who's not like necessarily a scientist, they just like organize the whole program. So you can also reach out to them and talk to them about like the program, and they'll give you like a really good in-depth view of it because they like coordinate everything and they'll like arrange your housing and meals and presentation and stuff. So another resource you can use is talking to like someone called like a program coordinator or director.
I would like one note though, like if they don't give you their emails and stuff like that, sometimes that means they don't want you to contact them, because that happened. I literally could not find their contact info anywhere because I was going to do that, and that's because I just didn't want like 200 people reaching out to them. So just like be considerate of their time as well. That's probably really busy. So if it's something that you can look up, like do not email someone about that. There's usually Q&A sessions too. That's not something we talked about. So if there's like an info session, I definitely recommend going to that. They can have Q&As, and sometimes they have recordings or transcripts of that. And that's a really good resource. So if you don't want to have to go contact someone directly, they usually have sections for that.
Another thing is like, so, this is like, I said, the top 20s here is like hard, maybe a little hard to get into, but, I think one thing to do is different universities have different like research classifications. So it's like R1, R2, R3. And what that means, like R1 means that it's like a research heavy institution. So you have this R1, and that's because we have a lot of grant money for research. We have a lot of effort dedicated into like PIs, grad students, postdocs, like training. And that's what makes us like a top tier research university. Or like R1, meaning we get like federal money to do this stuff. So that's like a good way to know if a school is like still a good school. Might not be like top 20, but it's like still a good school. And like somewhere you can go that will have like actual like good research stuff. Also, there's like program booklets that are in this online sometimes. So like you can see projects from past students. And you can check if you like the science there.
Also say like, I guess I'm a little biased, but also you can also look at like NIH, you know, NASA, government institutions. They usually have a lot of really great internship opportunities and usually have a lot of funding. So I'd say definitely look at schools, but don't kind of count those out. That's even.
Questions? Or we can use the next one.
Yeah, so make sure you guys fill up the follow-up survey, you know, let us know how CURBS is doing in the workshops, like how we could improve this workshop or what workshops you want to see in the future. Filling this out is crucial for us to help you.
So if you guys liked me and Iris, if you didn't like me and Iris, particularly if you didn't like us, then say something.
Yeah, please, I could go.
Maybe don't.
Maybe don't.
We can take more questions. We have a little bit more time, but actually technically it's slot is like I think 4:05 to 4:55. So you know if you want to go, no.
So say you're accepted to multiple REUs, do the REUs have like a cutoff point where you have to like accept it, and then like what do you do in that situation?
So that happened to me in my freshman year. I got into multiple, and then like one of them, my top choice, they were gonna let me know like later on. But I already got into one, and they wanted a response really fast. So I just called them and I was, hey, like I can't give you a response. Like I'll try to let you know as soon as possible. I'll contact them. And I told them I was doing everything in my power to like find out, and they were like okay with it.
Mine was the same, except for, as I kind of mentioned, the deadline for accepting the NASA internship was before any of my other internship deadlines had even, you know, came. So I had to literally decide within like, I think it was like 2 days, whether or not I needed to accept it. And they were not lenient about it at all. I think maybe because like, you know, it was a very competitive like application process. I think they were just like, you should want this in a way. But I really did. So I think that kind of made the decision easier because it ended up being the one I wanted more than the other ones. And I never found out if I got the other one. So I'll never know.
I'm sure you would have.
I actually did rejected from one. Sad, but the other one, I don't know.
Yeah, one time there's an internship or like an REU, and they got canceled because of COVID, and they emailed me anyway, and they're like, oh, just by the way, you would have been rejected.
Why?
You should ask MIU Material Science Department.
Oh,
That's how they-
it's harsh.
We take the questions.
Okay, I'm sure it's also help you, like if you want our contact information. Help you guys read over apps or anything.
Oh yeah, we could like family dismiss the workshop. If you have like really tailored personal questions that are like specific to your situation, you can ask them. Yeah, it's no difference.
Also, if you guys haven't filled out the sign out sheet, please do that because when you put your email, I'm gonna send out like a minutes form that has all the notes of this workshop, including their information on it. So you guys will have that as well. So make sure you sign that in. Or like if you guys can put that to the first page as well, like the first slide, and just fill that out if you haven't done that yet. Because that's the only way we'll be able to contact you, not only for this workshop, but for all future workshops as well.
Thank you guys so much for coming. It was really fun.
Yeah.